just a quickie in case you're ever stuck with a weeping wound that doesn't want to close. I have used all of my band-aids on this, and I don't have any more. That might seem to be a problem, but I present you a solution. So let's say you're in the bush and you run out of band-aids. Now, this is the pack of a band-aid package, but it's sterile, and it held sterile contents. So observez-vous. What we're going to do is we're going to take this little bit of sterile material. Now, what ends up happening in a case like this is I've got a few options here in my now very empty first aid kit. This has been going on for weeks, and I've used a lot of first aid material on it. However, if I were to take this, now it's not absorbent, and the crap is going to leak, but I've taken a very small amount of polysporin. I've put it on here. Voici là. Less than the size of a pea. Because this particular injury is minor at this point, but you can see that it is leaking, and it's still quite a wound. It's getting better. It's almost healed, so I'm just going to take it, directly smear it over the target, and then fold it. Okay? Now, you may say to me, Keith, well, that was dumb. No, we're not done yet. Because in your first aid kit, you're likely to have one of these guys, a rubber glove. Now, if it's low enough, you could just use the glove. You could cut it here and use the wristband of the glove and just pull it up, and then it'll hold that in place just great. In my case, I don't have to do that. I do have some other stuff here that I'm going to use to absorb the crap, but in this case, it's been used. It's covered in nasty gunk, and I do not want it directly up against the wound, but I do want to have it catch all this crap. Now, one of the great things about this type of gauze, it's just a standard roll of gauze, is it's really good at doing that. It'll just hold itself in place, so you really don't need anything else. And then you could just put your shirt over it, and that'll hold it in place. Now, it keeps something sterile up against the wound itself, which is good. It keeps the polysporin from getting basically evaporating or whatever, or getting rubbed off. It's on there, it's held in place, and it's waxed paper, which means it's pretty much waterproof. All good. So I just wanted to cover that real quick, because if you're in a tight bind, you could always use your gloves, but what I like to do is I'll use something like that, or the glove itself. You could just push the glove up against it, tie it on, and there you go. I mean, if you've got any of that, you've got something. Now, at this point, I'm just going to take this. Now, believe it or not, there are certain things you could use. There are leaves in nature, like eucalyptus, that when broken, have disinfectant. And you could take a leaf, break it only on one side, so just kind of snap it a couple of places, tuk, 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 in a row, lay the broken section on top, use it like a Band-Aid. And then it's seeping out disinfectant while you're using it. So in this case, what's happened is, like I said, I've gone through all my Band-Aids, and I don't want it to get infected. It's been 2 weeks of healing with no infection, and it's gone really well. But now I'm out of disinfectant almost. And I'm also out of anything sterile that I can use to cover it. These two things become a problem. But at least if you can cover it, your natural ability to deal with infection will help. A little bit of polysporin and that, and if you don't have that, I highly recommend hydrogen peroxide. I have a bottle around here somewhere, and it's really useful as well. But if you're going to do that, what I actually recommend is you soak a little bit of the gauze pad, put that under, but not directly on the wound. That gauze will, especially as you get a clot, it'll get trapped in the clot, and then you'll just be ripping off your Band-Aid and ripping off your healing at the same time, because if you're ripping the scab off every time you have to change the Band-Aid, you're in trouble. Now, one of the reasons I like this is because it gives you that sterile backing, and every time you open a Band-Aid, you're going to get 2 of those. So when you look at it like that, you've got your Band-Aid, save the package, because that gives you 2 more Band-Aids in an emergency. Just a little quick survival tip. Hope it helps. Also, if you look here, there was another one, and I showed it in a previous video. It was actually quite bad, only now it's downright invisible, and there really isn't much of a scar to speak of. In fact, it looks like it's going to heal up fully with no scar whatsoever, and that's partly because I kept it moist. If you don't keep it moist, you'll end up with significant scar tissue. As soon as you get two dead tissue ends, because they're dried out, that is how they actually die. Separating them from your finger won't kill them. Keeping them moist will keep them alive long enough to knit back together. And if you can do that, you got no problem. So in the bush, I've used different pastes that I can make out of different leaves and saps. I can make a paste, put it on a leaf, stick it to me, and then stick it to me with a sap. Works great. Makes like a sealant around it too. You can seal it right in there. And something like that, you can make your own. You know, if you're making your own Band-Aids, that's great. But if you're camping or something and you know, you get a bit of an injury, a lot of times, you know, most people's first aid kits will not cover a 2-week injury that's weeping like this, like a dog bite or a wolf bite. This came from a dog bite from a pit bull. And it's been weeping like crazy. And even though I'm lucky, I have full tendon usage and all that, I didn't get a really bad hit. It hurt, and it was deep to the bone. And in the bush, that could have been really, really bad. If I'd have been a week in the bush, like I often am, where it's a week hike to get out, yo, that's serious. You're gonna have gangrene by then. You'll be dying by then. At the very least, you'll end up losing your arm more than likely. And so it's really important to keep things sterile in the bush. And so one of the things I wanted to do there is make it so that that's a real thing, and you're going to end up with an option to kind of keep yourself safer. Even if you only had a couple of Band-Aids with you, you could technically make that work. Just clean it really well, but you are better off using your own saliva to do that than you are water out of a stream. Just saying. There could be a carcass upstream. There could be bacteria in the water. There will be some forms of bacteria in the water. And without you knowing what it is, it could be E. coli or something. You do not want to get that into a wound tract. So having something clean is really important. In this case, I've used no water. I've only used a little bit of polysporin since I did it, and hydrogen peroxide. That's it. But if you don't have one, you can use the other. If it's hydrogen peroxide, make sure you work it 1 drop at a time into the wound until it stops bubbling. Save as much of that stuff. Use as little as you can. Same with polysporin. Use as little as you can. You only need a tiny little bit. And once you've sealed it in like that, in a place where it's not absorbing into the Band-Aid, you'll actually find you need less of it. That's another tip. But it has helped me a lot here because first aid stuff is really expensive nowadays. My roommate, whose dog it was that bit me, he paid to buy me more medical stuff, and he got me a bottle of hydrogen peroxide. He got me a bunch of stuff. I got a few things and spent $30. He spent 50, and that's what it cost me to heal this wound. It was about $80. So that's a fair bit. But I also have gone through a roll of gauze. I've gone through a separate roll of military gauze. That's not really a roll. It's like a square package. But that's a good one too. It's a little tougher than this stuff, and it sticks to you less, but sticks to itself as well, which is really good. I've used KT wraps in the past. There's so much stuff you can use. All those are great, but they're expensive. And if you don't have any of that, well, it's a little late to go get it when you get injured in the bush, right? So if you can't do that, or if you just don't have the money, don't just sit there and get infected. A lot of people do, and then they go to the hospital once it gets bad. You don't do that. You can take care of it right away if you go after any potential for infection, which means you got to have some kind of disinfectant in there, and then you got to keep it clean, and that's where keeping it covered comes in, and you got to keep the air away from it. Now, polysporin takes care of all that because bacteria and shit can come in the air, and the air isn't really the big risk of bacteria, but it is the big factor when it comes to drying out the skin and having it die. Now, in the bush, especially in the cold, when you get a little paper cut, it starts like this, and then the skin dries and it opens right up. I can show you scars I have that are from that. That wouldn't have been a scar had I been able to keep it from opening up like that. In the cold, in dry conditions, it really is going to split right open on you. And so pressing it together tightly with a Band-Aid or a wrap helps to close the wound and helps to keep it knit back together. So I like to use Band-Aids like a suture where I pull the wound closed, put a tight Band-Aid on it. Then the next time I do that Band-Aid, I actually try and close it a little harder each time and bring it a little closer to closed, which you should and can do, but you don't want to force it closed right away. And the reason is you might have an infection, a minor infection inside. And when you put in your polysporin or whatever else, that's going to come out of you. That's why this is weeping. It's still leaking pus. It's been pussing steady for 2 weeks. And I've gone through more first aid stuff in the fact that it's pussing everywhere, meaning that I'm constantly having to change the band-aids. And that is where a weeping wound in the bush becomes a problem, because you're constantly having to change band-aids and you're constantly having to expose it to both the air and to other chances for infection. That's all bad. So what the goal is to minimize the risk of infecting it in the first place, keep the skin from dying so that it can knit back together properly. When you do those things, it will heal a lot faster. And in the bush, that's a really big deal. These were like to the bone type injuries and deep and nasty gashes. And one of them is almost completely gone and it's just a little hole now. The other one is completely healed over. The scab is gone, the whole thing. And it's just a little pink spot that's going away. So in the end, that just proves out the point, and I've done this in the bush many times. What I will say is if you don't have any of that, Vaseline, a little bit of Vaseline, a little bit of polysporin, carry those two things with you, if nothing else. Vaseline is an amazing system because it's waterproof. It keeps the air out. If dirt gets on it, you can just wipe it and there will be enough left underneath that it still keeps the air out. And it'll hold the polysporin and keep that from evaporating or absorbing into the Band-Aid, which means you can lay one on top of the other and then put the Band-Aid on top of the Vaseline. And what it'll mean is that it holds in the goodies, and as it pusses, you can just kind of wipe it and it reseals itself. As it's leaking, you can just kind of wipe it and it'll reseal itself. And even if you don't, the Vaseline being there will kind of reseal it. As it punches out pus, it'll kind of reseal around it, the little hole. So it helps to keep things closed up even after it's leaking. Now, polysporin generally, if it's leaking through a Band-Aid, that's okay. It's holding that up against you. That's fine. Same with this little plastic bit or the wax paper. Works great. Anything like that that's sterile is going to work for you. But if you don't have anything like that, Vaseline, even on its own, just rub Vaseline on it. And all of a sudden you find that it's waterproof. It keeps the gunk out. And if you can do that right away, your body can usually deal with whatever might have gotten in there that might start a minor infection, like a splinter or something in the animal's mouth or whatever. A rusty piece of whatever is more dangerous because that's going to be into your blood, and you're not going to be able to get rid of a blood infection with anything other than antibiotics. You're going to need to get into a situation where you can get to a hospital. So infections in your blood are really dangerous, guys. Again, one last thing, when you're dealing with something like this, you can just come along and tuck it up under here, and you'll notice it's pretty dirty. It's pretty ratty. But that's because I've been using this. This was brand new in the package 2 weeks ago. And I live indoors. So it's not nearly as dirty and nasty as it would be in the bush. But therein lies the rub. You want to make sure that the wrap that you use to hold it in place, whether it's your shirt or whatever, is absorbent if you can. I've been known to tear a chunk of shirt off. Whatever works. You got a bunch you can tuck in at the bottom, you'll cut that off. That little seam at the bottom, and you'll find that makes a perfect wrap that you can then tie. I also generally will keep a military grade tourniquet with me in the bush, that sort of stuff. If you're wondering what that'll look like, looks like that. Okay. It's just a tourniquet, standard issue stuff, guys. Okay. But in the end, these are really handy. There's a lot of stuff that's good to have in your first aid kit that most people don't think of. For example, I'm going to whip out my other kit for a real quick second because I generally carry two, and I prefer to carry two. The reason is this one has all the quick first aid stuff: polysporin, band-aids, gauze, wraps. This has more serious first aid stuff for more serious survival situations. Everything from a good compass, because it's a survival situation, to a signaling mirror. Looks kind of gay, but a signaling mirror is not the same as your typical mirror because there's two. Okay? And I can use this to reflect sunlight and start a fire, believe it or not. I can use all kinds of things. A mirror will start a fire. I don't know if you knew that. Not so much, but a magnifying glass will. And I carry one of those in my kit too. And that is why I carry it. A compass, a magnifying glass, and a signaling mirror. And a pocket knife, a good pocket knife. You're going to carry, those are what you need. Those are great basics. That and a good whittling pocket knife. So I'll carry a couple different things with me. Now then we get into this. So these are essentials. An EpiPen. Why? Because I have been known to be allergic to bee stings. Got swarmed once when I was a kid, and it's hit or miss with me. Sometimes I have a reaction, sometimes I do not. Now, Fox Seal. These are great. Okay? This is for sucking chest injuries. Okay? You'll notice I didn't use that. This guy, an intubation tube in case you have to breathe into somebody or an animal. I do first aid on animals. A good thermal blanket. So this is why this is the more serious survival kit, because this has also a few of these salted buttons that are the plasticky buttons that you suck on. They're actually good for creating moisture, and they work. So this is for the more extreme survival stuff. Like, I'm going to die now if I don't have immediate care. This is the bag I go for. But it covers a variety of situations. It covers, hey, I'm lost and I could die from that. Everything to, I've got a sucking chest injury because I got a bullet hole. Any of that, I go for the big one. For the other one, I go for the smaller stuff. Like I said, the Band-Aids, all that stuff. Now, that bigger kit, you don't necessarily have to carry a military grade kit. But when I put that together, that's exactly what that was. And it's now gutted as far as the basic kit goes. But the serious injury stuff is still all there. Now, you might think those are useful if you get a weeping injury like this, but none of that will help me with this. And so while each of those items could be incredibly useful in certain situations, they're all the kind of item that are very specific to be used in one given situation, and that's it. And so I keep that stuff aside, whereas all the general stuff, polysporin, general first aid material that you're going to need for the average injury, I always go for that one first, because that's what I use it for. That's the plan. It's got medical tape and all that other stuff in it when I started it, and now it's all gutted. So it'll cost me about probably $80 again to refill that kit. But if I'm going to go camping or sailing or anything like that, 100% worth having. I would add to that, it's missing some things. A bottle of Tylenol gel caps, hell no. Advil, baby. You want the stronger stuff for this. You don't want something that might or might not work. No, I want ibuprofen. So good ibuprofen pills. Also, you want some basic antibiotics. Amoxicillin works fine. Any of the basic but good strong antibiotics, so that you have a course. And if you are putting together a first aid kit, go to a pharmacy and tell them that. None of that stuff is illegal. They will gladly furnish you with that stuff. Also, vitamin C pills, something like that to help you with energy in case you are struggling for energy. That can help a lot. And something that you can suck on, like those salted buttons, to make saliva. It'll help you to stay hydrated, believe it or not, and to feel hydrated even if you're not getting enough moisture, and help you make it until it rains and you can make a rain catch-all and get yourself some clean drinking water. All those things are accounted for in that kit, believe it or not. And so it's one of the reasons I like to keep it aside. It does so much to have a good kit. You know, there's so much survival potential there. And without something like that, you are hugely limiting your survivability, guys. Now, I recommend in case of in the bush, there's rusted stuff everywhere. There's people. You know, we've dumped garbage everywhere. You go into the middle of nowhere where you think there's no people, and you start seeing rusty barbed wire, rusty bear traps. You know, people have trapped this whole country for hundreds of years. So you got to be careful about this stuff, right? And if you get caught in a bear trap and it's rusty, man, you're going to have a real problem. Now, the good news is it probably didn't close as hard because it's rusty. The bad news is it's going to give you a blood infection and you're going to need those antibiotics. And those painkillers are going to come in real handy if you have to be on the move while you're in a lot of pain. Take 4 if you're broken. If you're not, take 2. Give them 20 minutes to kick in and then start doing your first aid. I find that helps a lot because then you've already got some painkiller in your bloodstream, some antibiotic type stuff. There are some things in it that are good for infection. You might think there really aren't. You're not curing an infection because you took 2 Advil. You're not curing blood poisoning because you took 2 Advil. But it's really handy. But I didn't list it in the initial because I consider it to be secondary. It's for your convenience and for your comfort level rather than for your survival, which is why I didn't include it right away. But it's useful to have. However, the antibiotics, you may choose painkillers over antibiotics for your first aid kit, but I'll tell you right now that's a mistake. If you're only going to pick one of the two, if you've got a limited budget, for example, and you can only buy one of the two, get the antibiotics. Um, you may regret it if you get a minor cut and it gets infected and all you got was painkillers. Keith,